So check that out. Welcome to the lesson. My name is Dave Hill, and thank you for tuning in. All right, so we're going to talk about something that we haven't covered up till now, and it's a way to add a little bit of depth and interest to your single note playing without really doing much more than just doubling the notes. And you can probably see what I was doing as I was bridging my fingers across a couple pairs of strings to create octaves. Okay, and octaves have a very compelling kind of sound because they have an octave separating the two notes, so they have a certain kind of a thickness that you can't get from just one note. So that's what I was trying to show you there with my opening demo there. So the only challenge is with octaves is that you're constantly playing over a string, skipping a string to do that, right? So you have to realize that you have to use muting to create the dead string underneath it, or you don't want to hear this, or right, you don't want to hear the open string underneath it, right? So you have to kind of deaden with your fingering hand. And you'll also notice too, I was utilizing more of a thumb technique to get a softer sound. Okay, there's been a lot of people over the years that have defined octave playing in their technique, but there hasn't been anyone quite as associated with that technique than the great jazz guitar player Wes Montgomery, and that was basically his sound was utilized with his thumb, right? And you can hear the difference if I use a pick. It's a little harder edge to the sound. It doesn't sound bad. I just think after you've heard this, it sounds much more appealing with the thumb. So, you can practice both methods, but I like to do the thumb if I'm getting into this kind of sound. If I was kind of using it in the middle of other technique, I'd have to use my pick anyway. But I'll just use it today, mostly with thumb. Okay, so I've written out the shapes over there on the board of the main octave patterns that you're going to want to utilize. Okay, and out of these 6 shapes, I probably use the first 4 more than any of them. Okay, and that's basically what we've got here is the octave shapes from the 3rd string, skipping over the 2nd string to the 1st string, and also the 4th string skipping over the 3rd string to the 2nd string. Right? And then as you get down to the next octave group, then you have this shape that closes in by 1 fret because of the tuning of the strings. And then that goes down. Okay, so your facility to play single notes is hampered a little bit by the fact that you have to finger 2 notes at the same time. So it's hard to play the same kind of lines or melodies that you... It's hard to play that kind of stuff if you're playing octaves, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to sound good, right? You can just make your notes have a lot more connection and phrasing and soul if you play them in the right way. Like, you can play this kind of bluesy sound, right? That sounds really cool against A, right? You tend to play a little bit more bluesy stuff with octaves because the pentatonic shapes work really well in the octave patterns, right? It's kind of hard to play major scales in one position like that. So that's okay. We can make a lot of music with pentatonics. Okay. And then the last 2 shapes that I have written out involve skipping 2 strings, right? Skipping over a group of strings, because the octave shape now, instead of being, is going to be in this location. So you have to really be careful with this shape, because if you're not careful with your string dampening, it's really easy to get extra notes in there. So I feel more comfortable playing, choking off 1 note here than with 2 notes. And so I've given you that shape on the E to the D string, and also the B to the A string. I just don't find myself as quite as capable of dampening on those 2 shapes, so I tend to use these more, instead of going. Okay? So a good way to practice getting your octaves in your playing is just to start off with something simple that you can hear a melody to, right? You could just be literally like the pentatonic scale. You could just go, because you're going to know right away when you make a mistake, right? So just take that melody and put the octaves inside of it. And your guide tone could be your 4th finger. The note that's on top could be what you see as the melody. If you see that your 4th finger going, right? If you can see a melody like that and guide it with your 4th finger, and you know the right shape with your 1st finger, it's easy to do, or easier. As long as you make the right accommodation for the fingering. On these shapes, you're going to have 1 fret in between, and when you go up here, you're going to have 2 frets. So the pentatonic scale would just be, right? And if you kept going down, it's a little bit more difficult, because then you get into, you really can't get octaves on the lowest strings, because at that point you're using your lowest string you can't get below that. So you tend to sort of stay about on the tonic right here, and then that's pretty much it below. So you can do your whole pentatonic scale. Oops. Okay? So, you're limited a little bit in terms of the range you can play, but you can certainly get out of that position. And you do a lot of stuff where you play up strings, right? You might play this melody, right, along this. The reason you would do like that is because then you don't have to make accommodations for the fingering, right? You can just keep the same shape, and you don't have to jump over strings, right? You just got to get accurate with your strings, position shifting, right? A couple times I've already made a mistake, but you can hear what you have to do. Okay? So that's pretty cool. You can practice that stuff along one or 2 strings. Oops. See, there it is again. And down here. And then finally. So let's try that little routine. We'll go up the pentatonic notes on every string. Oops. And then. Okay, so here we go. It'd be like this.